When the Rangers start their season next year, Adolis Garcia will be on the field, except he'll be playing for the other team.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 12 seasons, including all 7 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, on today's show, I'm talking about Adolis Garcia signing with the Philadelphia Phillies, what these new bullpen signings mean for the Rangers bullpen, and if Chris Young might just be allergic to velocity in this pen. But before we get into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com to place your NFL live bets all season long. Now, yesterday, almost immediately after I finished recording this podcast, of course, some news broke around the Texas Rangers that former Texas Ranger, former ALCS MVP Adolis Garcia had signed a 1-year, $10 million deal with the Philadelphia Phillies. So if you had any hope of Adolis Garcia randomly coming back to this team, your hope is now gone, because Adolis Garcia will be taking on the Rangers on opening day in Philadelphia as a member of these Philadelphia Phillies, who really could use some help in right field, because last year the production they got out of Nick Castellanos, while offensively was a little bit better than Adolis Garcia, defensively Nick Castellanos was an absolute travesty out there in the outfield. Probably the worst outfield defender in the sport last year was Nick Castellanos. And for 1 year, $10 million, that is not that much less than what Adolis Garcia was projected to make in arbitration. This was a guy who was projected to make anywhere between 12 and maybe a little bit below $13 million in his final year of arbitration. The Rangers, although they could have possibly paid that amount, they chose to say no thank you and designate him for assignment. They were actively looking to shop him in the trade market, but they could not get any value in a trade at all, which makes me think, wow, everyone must have thought Adolis Garcia was terrible. And then you see this deal that is not that far off from what he would have gotten from the Rangers, and it makes me think that the Rangers crying poor caused this. If the Rangers had not telegraphed so widely, if they had not shouted it from every single mountaintop they could possibly find, told every single reporter that would ever listen, oh, guys, we're so poor. Tell everyone how poor we are. Tell them that we can't pay anybody. And opposing teams heard that, and then they heard the Rangers ask them to trade assets like prospects or maybe major leaguers or cash considerations or something for Adolis Garcia at $12 to $13 million a year for 1 year. And they thought, you're going to cut this guy anyway, so why would we possibly trade you anything? Because if some team is willing to sign Adolis Garcia to a $10 million deal, and I don't think this is the only deal that Adolis Garcia had out there. I'm sure there were other teams that were suitors for Adolis Garcia. Maybe he didn't have any multi-year offers, but he only had 1 year left on his contract. It wasn't like this was some massive albatross contract. It wasn't the Albert Pujols contract. It was not anywhere near that level. Heck, it wasn't even the financial burden that Marcus Semion's contract was looking to possibly be, which was not that big of a financial burden. It was not even the Alex Rodriguez deal. It was not anything near the levels of massive financial burden. It was just 1 year. And because the Rangers spent so much time crying about how poor they are, all these other teams who might have wanted or who did want Adolis Garcia would have no incentive to trade away assets to go get this guy when they could have just waited until the Rangers were obviously going to non-tender him and then go sign him just for money. Because why would you pay them money and also give up prospects when you could just wait a minute, because it was so obviously telegraphed basically for the entire back half of the season. The Rangers were looking to trade him at the deadline. And because they spent the entire season as well crying poor, there was still the same lack of incentive for any major league team to say, yeah, we want Adolis Garcia. We'll take him for a year and a half for, a couple of prospects in our top 30, maybe, 20 to 30 range. And even that is better than just designating him for assignment and getting literally nothing in return, which is what happened for the Texas Rangers this year. Because they just decided to telegraph their playbook, it led them wide open to a team saying, no, thank you. Because it would have been really nice to get some kind of prospect from the Phillies for Adolis Garcia. It would have been nice to get, any kind of prospect more than just literally nothing, which is what the Rangers are getting in return. Now, with some of the other guys that they designated for assignment that they just, or non-tendered, that they non-tendered him, Jonah Heim, I don't think there's any team in the world that would have said, hey, I see that guy who's been the worst hitter in baseball for the last 2 years. He's going to make $6 million. Great. He's also not as great defensively as he's been the last couple of years. Sold. Let me give you some prospects for the $6 million catcher who stinks. No, that was not an option. Non-tendering Jonah Heim made all the sense in the world, but also non-tendering Jacob Webb, a guy who had a year left on his contract, was projected to make about $2 million. I'll talk a little bit more about Jacob Webb in the second and third segment when I'm talking more about this bullpen. But the fact that they just non-tendered him as well, instead of possibly getting some kind of a return for a guy who was a valuable pitcher. I mean, this was just the Rangers' own self-imposed financial struggles that came back to hurt them, not just in their roster building for signing free agents or lack of signing impact free agents. They signed a trio, of free agents on Friday night, which I talked about on yesterday's show. But still, this is them telegraphing their playbook and letting other teams know that exactly what they're going to do, which is hurting themselves. It is hurting themselves badly in this way. Now, I don't think the Rangers were going to get some kind of massive prospect haul for Adolis Garcia if they traded him ahead of the non-tender deadline a little over a month ago. I don't think that was on the table, but they could have gotten something. Anything is better than just saying, no thanks, see you later to Adolis Garcia, because like I've said all offseason, this is not some bum. This is not some horrible, worthless player. A lot of this fan base, and honestly a lot of the local media were treating Adolis Garcia as if he was this huge, massive albatross, terrible player. He was not. He was an exceptional defender. He was below average offensively. He was below what the Rangers needed him to be offensively, but he was not this crap player that couldn't hope to make the big leagues. This was a guy who won the ALCS MVP 2 years ago. He had the greatest postseason run possibly in the history of the sport 2 years ago. And although the last 2 years have been bad, have been very disappointing, and 2024 was way worse because defensively he wasn't even good there. He was awful offensively and awful defensively. At least this year, this was a valuable winning player who could help a team, who will help a team, who has postseason aspirations and is willing to pay to get those in the Philadelphia Phillies. And so this deal, while I'm happy for Adolis Garcia, I hope he goes out there. I hope he thrives in Philadelphia. It is more of a failure on the Rangers to see this deal and think, wow, we probably could have gotten at least something for Adolis Garcia, if not for Ray Davis forcing this team to cry, we're so poor. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place live bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Let's look at some of these odds for FanDuel right now for the World Series. How much better are Adolis Garcia's odds to win the World Series now that he's a member of the Philadelphia Phillies? Right now, the Phillies have plus 1,000 odds to win the whole dang thing this year. The third best behind the Dodgers at plus 260 and the Yankees at plus 800, whereas the Rangers are all the way down there at plus 4,500. So more than 4 times better odds Adolis Garcia has now to win a World Series than if he had stayed with these Texas Rangers. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Shout out to the editors making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, I'll be back and talking a little bit about how the Danny Jansen signing impacts this offense and why I think it really does exactly what the Rangers needed to do from a catcher signing perspective on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Rangers. I'll still be at 5 episodes a week this week. Next week, I am going down to 3 episodes a week for Christmas. And for that portion of the offseason, I'll be back to 5 episodes a week. I believe it's in February. So stay tuned. This is probably your last week of getting 5 episodes per week. So make sure to enjoy it and tune into every single episode. Now, the Rangers did make another signing yesterday, not exactly an impact signing, not a major league signing, but they did sign some minor league depth in Jose Herrera, a catcher who has been in the big leagues for 4 seasons, all those 4 seasons with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He is heading into his age 29 season, coming off of a spectacular 0 WAR season with the Diamondbacks, 57 games last year, a 544 OPS, which is just a little bit ahead of his 539 career OPS. He has had a career high 2 home runs in 57 games last year. That was also a career high. He was fine. Defensively, he doesn't do anything particularly spectacular. He is going to be a minor league signing with an invitation to major league spring training. The whole point of this is just giving the Rangers somebody else if there is an injury to either Danny Jansen or to Kyle Higashioka. They will have a guy in AAA who has 4 years of big league experience to come up and fill a gap for a couple weeks and be fine. That's kind of what this is. I don't know why Baseball Reference has him projected to hit a career high 5 home runs and 300 plate appearances, which would also be pretty significantly a career high for him. Baseball Reference is just very optimistic about the Jose Herrera signing. I'm not quite as optimistic. I say, fine, this is the type of signing that good teams do. And so fine. But I do want to talk about this bullpen. I said yesterday, I'd talk about what these signings mean for the roles in this Rangers bullpen. And in addition to signing Danny Jansen to a 2-year deal on Friday night, they also signed Tyler Alexander, a left-handed pitcher who does not have a lot of velocity. Stop me if you heard that before. And also Alexis Diaz, brother to Edwin Diaz, former All-Star, former really good closer last year. Not so much in terms of the ability to close and to have success at the major league level. Tyler Alexander's deal was for 1 year, $1.125 million, and he could double that with incentives. I don't know exactly what those incentives are, but not exactly a buy high deal. And Rangers GM yesterday, Ross Fenstermaker, saying that I don't know if we're necessarily looking for bargains. And then they sign a guy who had a near 5 ERA last season to a 1 year, $1.125 million deal. That's bargain bin. That's bargain hunting. And it's okay to say that. And that's exactly what it is. But what do the Rangers do with roles in this bullpen? Because I don't think Tyler Alexander is going to be closing games for the Texas Rangers, barring some kind of just horrible, whatever the opposite of a miracle is. That's what it would take for Tyler Alexander to close out games for the Rangers. Now, he did have a save last season. That was the 3-inning save your bullpen kind of a save, the 1980 save where a reliever would go and pitch the final 3 innings of a game that their team was winning and then gets the save that way. That is not exactly the same as how players are getting saves now. But at this point, with how the Rangers bullpen stacks up, I think at this point, the closer, it might have to be Robert Garcia, because right now the Rangers don't really have anybody particularly better in that pen. Maybe it's Cole Winn. Maybe Cole Winn is the Rangers closer heading into next season, because right now there's not a whole lot else there. I think Tyler Alexander will slot into a kind of role like Hoby Milner had last year, a side-arming lefty who doesn't have a whole lot of velocity, who doesn't walk guys, who stays in the zone. That is what the Rangers are banking on, is guys who can stay in the zone, won't beat themselves with walks, can get some weak contact and just get some outs. I think that's kind of the role that Tyler Alexander is going to play. But I think that banking on Alexis Diaz being a closer heading into the season, he's got to win that job. That is not a job you can just hand out and say, all right, cool. That guy's our closer. He's been a closer before. That's fine. What did he do last year? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about that he had an ERA north of 8 last year. I think part of that, at least the Rangers in their mind think that a big part of that is the quad injury that he suffered in spring training, that just he was never quite right for Cincinnati last year. He had a 12 ERA in 6 games there. And then the Dodgers acquired him, and he was not great, honestly, not horrible for the Dodgers, but a 5 ERA in 9 games, 9 innings there. Exactly 1 strikeout per inning, but 5 earned runs in 9 innings for Dodgers. They said, no thanks, not quite good enough. Then he went to his 3rd team of the season, the Atlanta Braves. He had 3 outings there. He gave up 4 runs, only 3 of them were earned, walked 5 in 2 2/3 innings. And then that was it. He is still fairly young. Alexis Diaz is not a guy with particularly elite stuff in terms of his velocity, at least not anymore. Back in 2022, when he broke into the big leagues, averaging 95.7 miles an hour on his 4-seam fastball, that was one of his best seasons, at least by ERA. That was his best season. The next year, when he had 37 saves, which was his career high, he was averaging 94.5 miles an hour with the 4-seam fastball. The thing that makes his fastball play up is because he has elite extension. In that year where he had 37 saves, his extension, how far he gets down the mound, he's listed at 6'2", but he really can get down the mound because he was in the 100th percentile of extension. So what that means is, where's the pitcher releasing the baseball? How close to the hitter are they when they release that baseball? The closer you are to the hitter, the faster that velocity plays up. And this year, still the extension in the 100th percentile. You look at the Baseball Savant page, although he's not a qualifier because he only pitched in 18 games last year, he's still in the 100th percentile of his extension. His hard hit rate is still elite. The average exit velocity is still elite, but the walk rate, strikeout rate, whiff rate, barrel rate, ground ball rate, all of those were really, really terrible last year. And the velocity is down from where it had been pretty significantly in a 2-year stretch, averaging 93.5 miles an hour with that fastball last year, whereas it's down 2 miles an hour from where he started. It is already down 2 miles an hour in 3 years. That is a pretty significant drop off. Maybe injuries played a part in that, but I think Alexis Diaz is going to start, I think, as the Rangers' 7th or 8th inning guy, because as of right now, I mean, I don't like it. I don't think it's a smart move having Robert Garcia as your closer. We saw him poop the bed pretty spectacularly in some of those big moments last year, but I don't think that going with Cole Winn right now would be the smartest move, because, I mean, right now, I think you're going to be asking a lot out of Carter Baumler, who the Rangers traded for, a Rule 5 draft pick from the Pittsburgh Pirates last week during those winter meetings. Basically the only kind of major league move that they really made during those winter meetings. I think asking a lot or really much of anything from him is tough. I think Luis Crivello is going to be a part of this bullpen. To what extent, I don't exactly know. Don Hamill is going to be some part of this pen. I do really like Michael Otanez. He is one of the few guys in this pen who actually throws velocity. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the 3rd segment, but I think as of right now, the Rangers closer is probably going to be Robert Garcia. I think as of right now, the Rangers 8th inning guy, I'd say it's Cole Winn, and then their next tier of guys would be Luis Crivello and Alexis Diaz, which it's not great. That is not a great pen. Now, I don't think the Rangers are just going to go into the season with this as their bullpen. I think they still have more signings to do, which I'll talk a little bit more later on in the week about what the Rangers still have left to do. But at this point, it's not all that spectacular. I think Alexis Diaz is a nice buy low signing. The Rangers have not officially announced that signing just yet. He is still doing a physical, and so If that does not go well, then maybe the Rangers don't sign him or they alter the amount of money on that deal. There's not been any report for how much that contract is. The Rangers have apparently agreed to it, according to multiple reports, but the Rangers have not officially announced that signing. They're still waiting for Alexis Diaz to go through his physical, and then they will finally announce that, hopefully in the coming days. I'm excited about Alexis Diaz. I'm not that excited. I'm not really that excited about Tyler Alexander because I don't think he's getting any high leverage opportunities, and I'll tell you why right after this. This show is brought to you by Gametime. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Gametime app is clutch. It's finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging those seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, you can get alerts with great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. The seat view feature is a game changer. You literally see what the pitch looks like from your exact seat before you buy. Prices include fees up front, which I love. No last second surprises at checkout. Alerts for teams matches make it easy to grab tickets the moment they drop instead of missing out. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Gametime. Shout out to the areas for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On Thursday's show, I'll be back and talking about what's left to do for this Rangers team during this offseason because they've got some stuff left to do, especially building in this bullpen. But I don't think that Tyler Alexander is going to play a high leverage role in this bullpen because last year, the more I dove into the numbers with Tyler Alexander, the less I kind of liked this deal. Now, Alexander is not a premium pitcher. He is not a big money signing. He was just kind of meh the last 2-3 years, really. He has not been a particularly impactful signing. And especially when you dive into some of the splits, how he looked in these high leverage situations in late and close games, the more I dove into it, the less excited I was about it. Because when you look at what Baseball Reference counts as high leverage situations last year, he pitched in 28 games, 97 plate appearances when it was a high leverage situation. In those at-bats, he allowed a 325 batting average, a 400 on base, and a 500 slugging percentage, a 930 OPS. You bring that down to medium leverage at-bats, 31 games, 108 plate appearances, a 366 batting average against, 407 on base, 505 slugging, a 912 OPS in medium leverage spots. But in low leverage spots, he was awesome. He was really great. 218 plate appearances, by far the most of any of those three categories. So mostly he was used in those very low leverage spots, a 213 batting average, a 570 OPS. So in high leverage, a 930 OPS, medium leverage, 912 OPS, low leverage, 570. So the lower leverage it got, the better he was. So that makes me think maybe don't put this guy in there in a save situation, because in save situations last year, he just was not all that good. He did have some starts where he had some starts. He had some actual starts last year. I don't think he's going to have a whole lot, if any, starts in Texas this year. I don't think he can be a part of this rotation plan, which is why he pitched so many innings last year. He pitched 97 2/3 innings as a reliever last year, but he spent time between Milwaukee and Chicago. He was not good in Milwaukee, a 6.19 ERA in 21 games with the Brewers, who are a spectacularly good pitching development team. And if the Brewers can't get a whole lot out of you, makes me think there's not a whole lot out of you to get. Because the year before, he was Tampa Bay. He was drafted and developed by Detroit, and he was, fine there. He had a couple seasons with an ERA below 4, which is, fine. He started some games kind of a mixed guy, whether he's starting or relieving, kind of that in-between guy, the long mop-up guy. That's kind of the last guy in your pen. That's kind of the role I'm envisioning for Tyler Alexander next year. But with the Rays in 2024, he had a 5.10 ERA. So if the Rays and the Brewers can't get the most out of you, I'm not thinking there's all that much there to get. The Rangers have been a smart pitching development organization. They have done some good things with signing guys to, buy low deals in terms of their bullpen arms the last couple of years. Kirby Yates, miraculous signing. I don't think that's happening again. I mean, what they did with the signings of Howie Milner and Sean Armstrong were fantastic last year. I mean, they really, really got the most out of those guys. They got a lot out of Jacob Webb. They got a lot out of Chris Martin in the games he was starting, who Chris Martin could be a candidate to come back to Texas. He is still looking to pitch in 2026, according to multiple reports. I thought he was going to hang it up after a season where he missed a significant chunk of time, only pitched in 49 games last year for the Rangers and had some success there. But the Rangers got a lot out of some of these guys on buy low deals like Webb, like Armstrong, like Milner last year. And I think they could do it again. But Tyler Alexander does not feel like one of the ones to necessarily do it with. And just because he's not throwing particularly hard, which is kind of a trend for this Rangers bullpen. Last year, the Rangers were among bottom 5 in terms of bullpen velocity. And while velocity isn't everything, the Rangers have gotten some success out of guys who didn't throw hard, particularly Kirby Yates, who was averaging 92, 91 miles an hour with his fastball. And when he was the second best reliever in all of baseball in 2024. But there's a reason why teams chase velocity. It's effective, especially in the closer's role. It is incredibly effective. It is very easy to overthink it and say, actually, if we got guys who can throw, give me a guy who throws 93 exactly where he wants it, as opposed to a guy who throws 102 and does not know where it's going. That's a nice sentiment to have. But if you go and look on FanGraphs over the last 3 years, I sorted this by reliever WAR over the last 3 seasons combined, and you look at the guys who are in the top 5. They are all guys who throw premium gas. Number 1, Aroldis Chapman, lefty, who throws absolute gas. Griffin Jax, a guy with the Twins, who throws absolute gas, sitting up there in the upper 90s, touching 100 all the freaking time. Cade Smith of the Cleveland Guardians, he sits in the upper 90s, touches 100 all the freaking time. Emmanuel Clase, even with missing most of the season, and I don't know if he's ever going to pitch again in Major League Baseball, probably not. He had a cutter who sat 100 miles an hour. All these guys in the top 10 outside of Matt Strahm, who is a lefty. Lefties are different and special, and he averaged 92 miles an hour on his fastball. But everybody else in the top 10 of the last 3 years combined, Brian Abreu, Tanner Scott, Mason Miller, Johan Duran, David Bednar, all of those guys sitting 97 miles an hour or better, or they're lefty. And they are the elite of the elite. You keep on going. Devin Williams, Ryan Helsley. Will Vest is an outlier, but Josh Hader, Andres Munoz, Raisel Iglesias, Adrian Morejon, Lucas Erceg, Trevor McGill, Fernando Cruz, Jeff Hoffman, all of those guys throwing absolute gas. It is very easy to go, hey, that guy throws hard. Missing bats is much easier when you throw hard, and you need guys who throw hard and miss bats to have good closers, especially in some of those late and clutch situations. As a part of this bullpen that struggled massively last year. And the Rangers don't exactly have guys who throw hard in their bullpen. It's Michael Otanez is kind of the only guy who is averaging 97 miles an hour with his fastball. He averaged 97 miles an hour last year. The Rangers got him as a waiver claim heading into his age 29 season, I believe. Didn't have the best year with the A's last year. Clearly the Rangers see something there. But outside of Otanez, there's really nobody in this bullpen who's averaging 97 miles an hour with their fastball or better. It's just not happening. And there's not a whole lot of guys in this Rangers farm system who really do that as well. There might be some guys who jump in there who are going to be parts of this pen, but I think banking on them and expecting them to be big parts of this pen is foolish. I think it's just biting off way more than you can chew. I think maybe Emiliano Teodo breaks camp with the Rangers out of their pen. He's a guy who's sitting well in the upper 90s with a nasty, nasty breaking ball and a improving changeup, but he missed a large chunk of last season with injuries and also ineffectiveness. He was just bad when he was on the field last year, when he was on the mound last year. He was not particularly great. I think that maybe we'll see a little bit of Leandro Lopez in the big leagues, but the Rangers are going to stick with him as a starter as long as they can. I think eventually he's going to be a bullpen piece, but we'll see if he brings some velocity to the Rangers pen. That way, Mark Church has got some velocity, but he missed a large chunk of last year and also didn't exactly wow when he was on the mound. He should be a big part of this Rangers bullpen, but I don't know how much you could particularly count on him. David Davalillo, another guy on the Rangers 40-man roster, he is not exactly bringing the heat. Carter Baumler, he sits in the mid-90s, touches as high as 98. That's not necessarily bringing the heat. It's bringing good fastball shape. And maybe he sticks on this Rangers roster for the entirety of the season, but I'm not necessarily banking on it. And then Winston Santos is a guy who I think the Rangers probably should convert to a reliever. Just let him go out there in the back of the pen and just throw absolute gas. Just become a two-pitch pitcher. The slider's really nasty. The fastball's really good. The changeup is improving, but not at a rate that I think it would be better to just keep him as a starter at this point. But all that to say, the Rangers just don't have a lot of gas, and it feels like the Rangers trying to overthink things. There is a reason why every team is chasing velocity, 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 even though it is doing a lot of damage to these pitchers' arms. These pitchers are getting hurt more frequently because it is a simple math problem. If you throw the ball harder, hitters have less time to react to it, and therefore, even if you make a mistake, you've got more margin for error. The hitters have to react to it faster, recognize that it's a mistake immediately, and then pounce on it. But if you're throwing 90 miles an hour, hitters have more time to recognize a mistake. You have to be absolutely perfect with your location every single time. And if you make a mistake, it's probably going to end up in the seats. It is not that hard to overthink why teams chase velocity, why it's so expensive as well. That's why teams are trying to overthink things. That's why Chris Young is trying to overthink things. It's all coming down to money because the Rangers can't afford to spend on guys who throw 98, 99, 100 miles an hour. They have to get cute on the margins. There's only so much cute that you can get while still having a good bullpen. And I hope the Rangers don't try and overthink it too much. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.